Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching the stars through the main screen. The space around Franklin Station looked peaceful, but Jake knew that peace would not last long. His ship was one of 5 human vessels, patrolling the edge of human space, and they were about to face something terrible. The communications officer turned to face him. "Captain, we're getting reports from Earth Defense Command. Admiral Kevin Hayes wants to speak with all patrol captains right away." Jake nodded and walked to his command chair. The screen flickered, and Admiral Hayes appeared. The older man looked tired and worried. Behind him, Jake could see the busy command center on Earth. "Captains," Hayes began, his voice heavy with bad news, "I have to tell you something that will change everything. The hegemony is coming." Jake felt his heart sink. Every human in space knew about the hegemony. They were 12 different alien species working together, and they had controlled most of the galaxy for 3,000 years. No one had ever stopped them. No one had ever even tried to fight them for very long. "New Geneva went dark 6 hours ago," Hayes continued. "Port Liberty stopped responding 3 hours after that. We sent scout ships to both colonies. There's nothing left. The planets are empty. All the people are gone." Lieutenant Commander Lisa Parker, Jake's second in command, stepped closer to his chair. She was a good officer, smart and brave. "Sir, how many people lived on those worlds?" 4 million on New Geneva, 2 million on Port Liberty." Hayes paused. "All gone in a matter of hours." Dr. Amanda Foster, the ship's communications expert, raised her hand. "Admiral, have we received any messages from the hegemony? Any demands or warnings?" "Nothing," Hayes replied. "They don't waste time talking. They just take what they want." Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was listening carefully. Chief Engineer Pete Williams, an older man with 30 years in space, was frowning deeply. Young Ensign Danny Clark, their navigator, looked scared but determined. "What are your orders, sir?" Jake asked. "Hold your position near Franklin Station. Protect the civilians there if you can. We're sending more ships, but they won't arrive. For days. You 5 ships are all that stands between the hegemony and 3 million innocent people." The screen went dark. Jake sat in silence for a moment. 5 small ships against the most powerful force in the galaxy. It seemed impossible. "Doctor," Foster broke the silence. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange on the long-range sensors. It's big. Very big." "Show me," Jake ordered. The main screen changed to show the edge of their sensor range. At first, Jake saw nothing. Then the computer enhanced the image, and he saw them. Ships. Dozens of them. They were coming fast, and they were enormous. "How many?" Lisa asked. Dr. Foster checked her readings. 47 ships, ma'am. The smallest one is 3 times bigger than our ship. The largest..." She paused. "The largest is the size of a small moon." Pete Williams whistled low. "I've heard stories about hegemony fleets, but seeing one is something else." Jake stood up. "How long until they reach Franklin Station?" 6 hours, Captain," Danny replied, his voice steady despite his fear. Jake walked to the communication station. "Dr. Foster, can you intercept their communications?" "Already working on it, sir." Her fingers moved quickly over her controls. "Got it. They're not even trying to hide their messages." Static filled the bridge, then alien voices speaking in their own languages. Dr. Foster's computer worked to translate the words. "Another primitive world," one voice said. It sounded like clicking insects. "This should be quick." "The creatures call themselves humans," another voice replied. This one sounded like breaking glass. "They have basic space travel, nothing more." "Standard." "Procedure then," the first voice continued. "Show them our power. They will surrender immediately, they always do." "What about their military forces?" 5 small ships, barely worth noticing. We could destroy them by accident." The alien voices laughed, a sound that made Jake's skin crawl. Dr. Foster turned off the speakers. "Captain, they don't even consider us a threat. To them, we're just another weak species to conquer." Jake felt anger building inside him. These aliens had killed 6 million humans without even thinking about it. They planned to do the same to Franklin Station, and they thought it would be easy. "Lisa," Contact the other ships in our patrol. I want to talk to all the captains. Yes, sir. A few minutes later, the screen showed the faces of the other 4 captains. Jake knew them all. Captain Susan Moore of the USS Ranger, Captain Bill Thompson of the USS Guardian, Captain Mary Adams of the USS Sentinel, and Captain Ron Baker of the supply ship USS Provider. You all heard the Admiral, Jake said. The hegemony is coming with 47 ships. We have 5. The smart thing would be to run away and let them take Franklin Station. But we're not going to do that, Susan Moore said. It was not a question. No, Jake replied. We're not. 3 million people live on Franklin Station. They're counting on us. The odds are terrible, Bill Thompson pointed out. We might not even slow them down. Maybe not, Jake agreed. But maybe we can do something they don't expect. They think we'll run or surrender immediately. Every species they've conquered has done exactly that. Mary Adams leaned forward. What are you thinking, Jake? I'm thinking they've never fought humans before. They don't know what we're capable of when we're protecting our families. Pete Williams spoke up from behind Jake's chair. Captain, I can make some changes to our weapons and shields. Push them beyond normal limits. It might give us an edge. Do it, Jake ordered. All ships, prepare for battle. We're going to show the hegemony something they've never seen before. Ron Baker's voice was quiet. What's that, Jake? Jake looked at the approaching alien fleet on his screen. 47 ships full of creatures who thought humans were weak and helpless. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Humans who refused to give up. The hegemony fleet appeared on the edge of Franklin Station's solar system, like a dark cloud covering the stars. Jake Morrison watched from his captain's chair as the alien ships moved into formation. Each one was bigger than anything humans had ever built. Their hulls were black and covered with strange patterns that seemed to shift and move in the light. Captain, Dr. Foster called out, they're sending us a message. Put it on screen, Jake ordered. The main display flickered and an alien face appeared. It looked like a giant insect with 4 eyes and mandibles that clicked when it spoke. Behind it, Jake could see the bridge of the alien command ship. Everything was dark and metallic, with strange symbols glowing on the walls. I am War Commander Zethkar of the Vorthak, the creature said. Its voice was translated by the ship's computer, but Jake could still hear the clicking sounds underneath. You will identify yourselves. Jake stood up. I am Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Space Navy. You are in human territory. State your business here. The alien's 4 eyes blinked in what might have been surprise. Your territory? Zethkar made a sound that the computer translated as laughter. Small creature. This system now belongs to the hegemony, as do you. We don't belong to anyone, Jake replied firmly. Zethkar's mandibles clicked faster. You misunderstand your situation. I command 47 warships. You have 5 small vessels. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. Lisa Parker stepped up beside Jake's chair. She had been running combat simulations on her tactical computer. The numbers were not good. Even if everything went perfectly for the human ships, they had less than 1% chance of winning a straight fight. Captain, she whispered, their weapons are 50 times more powerful than ours. Their shields could probably stop everything. We can throw at them. Jake nodded but kept his eyes on the alien commander. War Commander, we decline your offer. This time, Zethkar's surprise was obvious. All 4 eyes widened and his head tilted to one side. You decline? Do you not understand what I have told you? I understand perfectly, Jake said. You want us to surrender. We're saying no. But you cannot win, Zethkar insisted. No species has ever defeated the hegemony in battle. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. We have destroyed entire civilizations. Your resistance is meaningless. Dr. Foster was listening to the alien communications channel. She turned to Jake with an excited expression. Captain, they're confused. Really confused. I'm hearing chatter from their other ships. They've never had anyone refuse to surrender before. Jake smiled grimly. Good. Let them stay confused. On the screen, Zethkar was talking to someone off camera. Jake could hear other alien voices, speaking in different languages. The computer translated bits and pieces. "These humans are either very brave or very stupid," one voice said. "What does it matter?" another replied. "We will crush them either way." "But why do they not surrender?" "Every species surrenders when they see our fleet." Zethkar turned back to face Jake. "Human captain, I will give you one more chance. Look at your screens. Count our ships. We have weapons that can destroy your entire planet from here. Your 5 little ships cannot stop us." "Maybe not," Jake admitted. "But we're going to try." Pete Williams had been working frantically in the engine room. His voice came over the communication system. "Captain, I've finished the modifications. Our weapons are running at 100 hour and 20% power. Shields are boosted to maximum. It won't last long, but it might give us an edge." "How long?" Jake asked. "Maybe an hour before something burns out," Pete replied. Danny Clark was studying the hegemony fleet formation on his navigation screens. The young ensign had noticed something interesting. "Captain, they're moving into a standard attack pattern. Very organized, very predictable. It's like they've done this exact same thing 1,000 times. Because they have," Dr. Foster added. "I'm intercepted more of their communications. This is their standard procedure. Show overwhelming force, demand surrender, then strip the planet of everything valuable." Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was scared, but they were ready to fight. Outside, Franklin Station was broadcasting evacuation warnings, but 3 million people couldn't be moved in a few hours. "Lisa, signal the other ships, formation Delta 7 around the station." "Yes, sir." Lisa's fingers moved across her controls. "All ships acknowledge. Moving into position." Jake watched as his 5 ships spread out in a defensive pattern around Franklin Station. The USS Ranger took position above the station. The USS Guardian moved below. The USS Sentinel covered the left flank, and the USS Provider, though just a supply ship, took the right. The USS Defiance held the center. Zethkar's image was still on the main screen. The alien commander looked genuinely puzzled. "What are you doing, human?" "We're protecting our people," Jake said simply. "But you cannot win. This is suicide." "Maybe. But it's our choice to make." Zethkar's mandibles clicked rapidly. He was clearly agitated. "I have destroyed species with 10 times your numbers. I have burned worlds to ash. Why do you persist in this foolishness?" Jake thought about the 6 million people who had already died on New Geneva and Port Liberty. He thought about the 3 million civilians on Franklin Station, huddled in their homes, trusting him and his crew to keep them safe. "Because someone has to," Jake answered. The alien commander made a sound of disgust. "Very well. You have chosen death over wisdom. I will grant your wish." The screen went dark. Dr. Foster immediately started monitoring all frequencies. "Captain, they're coordinating their attack. All 47 ships are moving into assault formation." "Time until they're in weapons range?" Jake asked. 15 minutes, Danny reported. Jake opened a communication channel to all his ships. "This is Morrison. In 15 minutes, we're going to face the most powerful military force in the galaxy. They think we'll break and run when the shooting starts. They think we're weak because we're human." He paused, looking at the massive alien fleet approaching his tiny force. "They're wrong. We're not weak. We're something they've never encountered before. We're humans with something to protect. Show them what that means." The communication channel crackled with responses from his fellow captains. "Ready to fight, Jake," Susan Moore replied. "Let's teach them about humans," Bill Thompson added. "For Franklin Station," Mary Adams said firmly. "For Earth," Ron Baker concluded. Jake sat back in his captain's chair and watched the enemy fleet approach. In a few minutes, the real test would begin. The first shots came like lightning across the darkness of space. Dozens of energy beams erupted from the hegemony fleet, all aimed at the 5 human ships defending Franklin Station. Jake Morrison gripped his captain's chair as the USS Defiance shook under the impact. "Shields holding at 60%, Lisa Parker called out, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. Return fire. The human ships fired back with everything they had. Their modified weapons, pushed beyond normal limits by Pete Williams's engineering magic, sent bright streams of energy toward the alien fleet. Most of the shots bounced harmlessly off the enemy shields, but a few got through. Direct hit on their lead cruiser, Danny Clark reported from his navigation station. Their shields are flickering. War Commander Zethkar's voice crackled over the communication channel. He sounded angry and confused. Impossible! How are these primitive weapons damaging our ships? Dr. Foster was monitoring all the alien communications. She turned to Jake with excitement in her eyes. Captain, they're really surprised. Their computers told them our weapons couldn't hurt them at all. Good, Jake replied. Lisa, target that damaged cruiser. All ships, concentrate fire. The 5 human vessels focused their attack on the wounded hegemony ship. The alien cruiser's shields collapsed completely, and the human weapons tore into its hull. Explosions bloomed along its side, and the massive ship began to drift. One down, Susan Moore's voice came from the USS Ranger. 46 to go. But the hegemony was not standing still. Their return fire was devastating. The USS Guardian took a direct hit that knocked out half its weapons. The USS Sentinel's shields failed completely, forcing Captain Mary Adams to pull back behind Franklin Station. We can't keep trading shots like this, Lisa warned Jake. They have too many ships. Jake watched the tactical display on his screen. The hegemony fleet was moving in a perfect formation, just like Danny had predicted. Every ship knew exactly where it was supposed to be. It was efficient, but it was also predictable. Danny, can you plot us a course through their formation? The young ensign's fingers flew over his controls. Yes, sir, but it'll be dangerous. We'll have to fly right between their biggest ships. Do it, Jake ordered. All ships follow the Defiance. We're going to shake things up. The USS Defiance suddenly changed direction, diving down and forward into the heart of the enemy formation. The other human ships followed, weaving between the massive hegemony vessels like small fish swimming through a school of whales. The aliens were not prepared for this. Their perfect formation became a problem when the human ships were flying right through the middle of it. Some hegemony ships had to stop firing to avoid hitting their own allies. This is madness, Zethkar's voice roared over the communication channel. What are they doing? Pete Williams' voice came from the engine room. Captain, I'm pushing the engines way past the safety line. We can't keep this up for long. How long? Jake asked as the ship shook from another hit. Maybe 10 minutes before something important explodes. Jake smiled grimly. Then we better make them count. Dr. Foster, start broadcasting on all frequencies. What should I broadcast, sir? Music, poetry, anything human? Dr. Foster looked confused, but did as ordered. Soon, human classical music was playing across every communication channel the aliens were using. Mixed in were readings of human poetry, children singing, and recorded messages from Earth. The effect on the hegemony was immediate. Their communications became confused and disorganized. Dr. Foster was translating as fast as she could. What? Is this noise? One alien voice demanded. It's some kind of psychological weapon, another replied. Make it stop, it's interfering with our targeting computers. Jake laughed. They don't understand music, they don't understand art. No wonder they've never met anyone who wouldn't surrender. The USS Provider, despite being just a supply ship, was proving surprisingly useful. Captain Ron Baker had filled his cargo holds with spare parts and supplies, but he was using them as weapons. He fired containers full of metal scraps at the enemy ships like giant shotgun blasts. Unconventional warfare, Lisa observed, watching the Provider's attack on her screen. They really don't know how to handle us. The battle raged for 30 minutes. The human ships darted in and out of the enemy formation, striking quickly and then moving before the aliens could respond effectively. They used the space around Franklin Station like a three-dimensional maze, hiding behind asteroids and using the station's gravity to change direction suddenly. But the cost was heavy. The USS Sentinel's hull was breached, and atmosphere was leaking out. The USS Guardian had lost most of its weapons. The USS Ranger was running on emergency power. Jake's own ship was in bad shape too. Half the bridge displays were dark and sparks flew from damaged control panels. Pete Williams reported that the engines were starting to overheat badly. "Captain," Lisa said quietly, "we've destroyed 3 of their ships and damaged 6 more, but we can't keep this up much longer." Jake nodded. They had done better than anyone could have expected, but 44 enemy ships were still too many. The hegemony was starting to adapt to human tactics. Their formation was becoming looser, more flexible. Then Danny Clark made a discovery that changed everything. "Captain, I've been watching their movement patterns. They're not just following orders from their commander. They're following a computer program. All their ships are connected to the same tactical system." "What does that mean?" Jake asked. "It means they all think the same way. If we can confuse the computer, we can confuse all of them at once." Dr. Foster looked up from her communication station. "I might be able to help with that. I've been analyzing their data transmissions. Their tactical computer expects enemies to behave logically. It predicts what we'll do based on standard military doctrine." "But we're not following standard doctrine," Lisa realized. "We're doing things that don't make sense." "Exactly," Jake said, understanding dawning on his face. "Danny, plot the most insane course you can think of. Something no sane military commander would ever order." "Yes, sir." Danny's fingers danced over his controls. "How about a direct charge at their command? Ship? Perfect. All ships prepare for one final attack. We're going to do something so crazy that their computers won't know how to handle it." The 5 battered human ships formed up one last time. They were damaged, running low on power, and facing impossible odds, but they were still fighting. War Commander Zethkar appeared on the main screen again. His 4 eyes were wide with something that might have been fear. "Human Captain, you have fought well, but this ends now. Surrender, and I will grant you an honorable death." Jake stood up slowly. His uniform was torn and there was blood on his forehead from a falling piece of debris. "War Commander, you still don't understand. Humans don't surrender when we're protecting our families. We get angry." He turned to his crew. "All ships charge!" The 5 human vessels accelerated directly toward the heart of the hegemony fleet, their weapons blazing and human music playing on every frequency. Behind them, Franklin, station's 3 million inhabitants watched and prayed. The 5 human ships raced toward the center of the hegemony fleet like bullets fired from a giant gun. War Commander Zethkar's command ship loomed ahead, a massive dark shape covered with weapon ports and sensor arrays. It was 10 times bigger than the USS Defiance, but Jake Morrison was aiming straight for it. "All power to forward shields," Jake ordered. "Pete, I need everything the engines can give us." Pete Williams's voice crackled over the intercom from the engine room. "Captain, the engines are already past the breaking point. If I push them any harder, we might blow up before we reach the enemy." "Do it anyway," Jake replied. The hegemony fleet opened fire with everything they had. Space filled with energy beams and plasma bolts all aimed at the charging human ships. The USS Defiance shook so hard that Jake could barely stay in his chair. Sparks flew from control panels all around the bridge. "Shields at 20%, Lisa Parker reported. Her voice was calm, but Jake could see the worry in her eyes. Behind them, the USS Ranger took a direct hit. Captain Susan Moore's voice came over the communication channel, filled with static. "We're losing power. Engine room is on fire. We can't keep up." "Break off," Jake ordered. "Get your people to safety." "No way," Susan replied firmly. "We started this together. We finish it together." The USS Guardian and USS Sentinel were also taking heavy damage, but they kept flying forward. Even the supply ship USS Provider stayed in formation, Captain Ron Baker refusing to abandon his friends. Dr. Foster was still monitoring enemy communications. "Captain, their tactical computer is going crazy. It keeps trying to predict what we'll do next, but our charge doesn't make sense to it. The program is sending contradictory orders to their ships." Jake could see the confusion on his tactical display. Some hegemony ships were trying to intercept the human charge, while others were pulling back to protect their command vessel. A few had stopped moving entirely, apparently waiting for clearer orders. "Their formation is breaking apart," Danny Clark observed from his navigation station. "They don't know how to handle us." That was when Pete Williams made his decision. The chief engineer had been watching the engine readings. knowing that the USS Defiance was only minutes away from a complete power failure. But he also saw something else on his screens. The hegemony command ship was right in front of them, and its shields were focused on the front to block their attack. "Captain," Pete said over the intercom, "I'm going to overload the main reactor. It'll give us one huge burst of speed, enough to ram right through their command ship's shields." "Pete, that's suicide," Jake protested. "Not if I eject right before impact," Pete replied. "The ship will keep going on momentum. Trust me, Captain. I've been doing this for 30 years. Jake felt his heart sink. Pete Williams was like a father to half the crew. But the old engineer was right. It might be their only chance to do real damage to the enemy. "Do it," Jake ordered quietly. The USS Defiance suddenly shot forward like a rocket. The overloaded reactor pushed the ship far beyond its normal speed. Within seconds, they were close enough to see the details on the hegemony command ship's hull. War Commander Zethkar's face appeared on the main screen. For the first time, the alien leader looked truly afraid. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "Something you've never seen before," Jake answered. At the last possible moment, Pete Williams ejected from the ship in an escape pod. The USS Defiance, now a guided missile, slammed into the hegemony command ship's bridge. The explosion lit up space like a new star. When the light faded, Zethkar's massive vessel was drifting helplessly, its command center destroyed. The war commander himself was nowhere to be seen. But Jake and his crew were not finished. Lisa Parker had been watching the enemy fleet's movements, and she had noticed something important. "Captain, look at their formation now. With their command ship damaged, they're not coordinating their attacks anymore." She was right. The hegemony ships were acting independently now, each captain making his own decisions. Some were trying to help the damaged command vessel. Others were still fighting the human ships. A few were pulling back, apparently unsure what to do. "All ships," Jake broadcast to his remaining vessels, "split up and hit them fast. Don't give them time to reorganize." The 4 surviving human ships scattered in different directions. The USS Ranger, despite its damage, dove at a group of enemy cruisers. The USS Guardian and USS Sentinel worked together to attack the hegemony's left flank. The USS Provider used its cargo containers as weapons again, firing them at enemy ships, like giant bullets. Dr. Foster was broadcasting false surrender signals on different frequencies, tricking some hegemony ships into lowering their shields. When they did, the human ships were ready with precisely aimed attacks. Danny Clark was using Franklin Station's gravity to perform impossible maneuvers. He would dive toward the station at full speed, then use the planet's pull to whip around, in directions that the enemy couldn't predict. For 6 hours, the battle raged. The hegemony had started with 47 ships. Now 12 of them were destroyed or too damaged to fight. But the human ships were in terrible condition too. The USS Ranger was leaking atmosphere. The USS Guardian had only one working weapon left. The USS Sentinel's engines were failing. Jake's own ship, the USS Defiance, was barely holding together. Half the bridge was dark, and they were running on emergency power, but they were still fighting. War Commander Zethkar appeared on HFY, the communication screen again. He was injured, with green blood running down one side of his insect-like face. Behind him, Jake could see that the alien command ship's bridge was a wreck. "Human captain," Zethkar said, his voice filled with something Jake had never heard from an alien before. "Respect. You have fought like no species I have ever encountered, but this battle is destroying both our fleets. I propose a ceasefire." Jake looked around his damaged bridge. His crew was exhausted, and his ships were falling apart. But they had done something incredible. They had stopped the hegemony fleet. "What are your terms?" Jake asked. "Withdraw your ships. We will withdraw ours. This system remains under your control." Jake could hardly believe what he was hearing. The hegemony was retreating. The mighty alien empire that had conquered 1,000 worlds was backing down from 5 human ships. "Agreed," Jake said. "But War Commander, remember this day. Remember that humans fought you to a standstill. And remember that there are billions, more of us where we came from." Zethkar's 4 eyes stared at Jake for a long moment. "I will remember, human captain," The galaxy will remember. The communication ended. Slowly, the surviving hegemony ships began to move away from Franklin Station. They formed up around their damaged command vessel and jumped to hyperspace, leaving the human system behind. Jake slumped in his captain's chair. They had won. Somehow, impossibly, they had won. "Captain," Dr. Foster said quietly, "I'm receiving a message from Admiral Hayes on Earth. The news of our battle is spreading. Every human colony is hearing about what we did here." Jake nodded tiredly. "And what about the aliens? What are they saying?" Dr. Foster checked her communications equipment. "The hegemony channels are very busy. They're talking about the humans who wouldn't surrender. Some of their subject species are asking questions." Lisa Parker looked up from her tactical station. "Sir, what happens now?" Jake looked out at the stars where the hegemony fleet had disappeared. He thought about the millions of alien species living under hegemony rule, and he wondered if any of them had heard about this battle. "Now," Jake said slowly, "the galaxy learns that the hegemony can be beaten, and that changes everything." 3 weeks after the battle at Franklin Station, Jake Morrison stood in Admiral Kevin Hayes' office on Earth. Through the large windows, he could see the busy shipyards where dozens of new warships were being built. The galaxy had changed, and humanity was preparing for what came next. 12 hegemony ships destroyed, Admiral Hayes said, reading from a report on his desk. 6 more damaged so badly they had to be towed away. And you did it with 5 ships, 3 of which were barely holding together by the end. Jake nodded quietly. The victory felt strange to him. They had saved Franklin Station and shown the galaxy that the hegemony could be beaten, but the cost had been high. Pete Williams was gone, and many other good people had died in the battle. "What's the news from the rest of the galaxy?" Jake asked. Hayes smiled for the first time in weeks. "That's the interesting part. Dr. Foster was right. The news of your battle spread everywhere. And I mean everywhere." The Admiral activated a holographic display that showed a map of the galaxy. Dozens of star systems were blinking with different colored lights. "The red lights are hegemony worlds where rebellions have started," Hayes explained. 17 so far, with more every day. Species that have been slaves for hundreds of years are fighting back. Jake stared at the map in amazement. "All because of one battle?" "All because someone finally proved the hegemony wasn't invincible," Hayes replied. "The blue lights are species that have contacted us directly. They want to form alliances against the hegemony. The green lights are neutral worlds that are asking for our protection." One of the blue lights was flashing brighter than the others. Hayes pointed to it. "That one is particularly interesting. It's the Kalari system. They were conquered by the hegemony 50 years ago, but they kept some of their ships hidden. When they heard about Franklin Station, they launched their own attack. They freed 3 of their colonies." Jake felt a surge of pride mixed with worry. "That's amazing. But what about the hegemony? They won't just let this happen." "You're right," Hayes admitted. "Our intelligence reports say they're building a much larger fleet. War Commander Zethkar was demoted and exiled for losing to us. The new commander is someone called Vex Thul, and he's reportedly much more ruthless." The Admiral paused and looked directly at Jake. "That's why I'm promoting you to Admiral. We need someone who understands how to fight the hegemony, and you're the only human who's actually beaten them." Jake felt overwhelmed. "Sir, I'm not sure I'm ready for that responsibility." "None of us are ready for any of this," Hayes replied. 6 months ago, the hegemony was just a scary story we heard from deep space explorers. Now we're at war with the most powerful empire in the galaxy, but we have something they don't understand." "What's that?" "Hope. For the first time in 3,000 years, the smaller species in the galaxy have hope that they can be free." Over the following days, Jake met with his old crew. Lisa Parker had been given command of a new ship, the USS Perseverance. It was twice the size of the old Defiance and equipped with weapons based on what they had learned fighting the hegemony. "The new ship is fast," Lisa told Jake as they toured the vessel together. "And the weapons are designed specifically to punch through hegemony shields. Plus, we have better armor and backup systems. Danny Clark was now training new pilots in what the military was calling human-style tactics. These included unpredictable movement patterns using music and art to confuse enemy computers, and making decisions based on emotion rather than pure logic. The aliens think logically, Danny explained to a class of young pilots. They're computers. Try to predict what we'll do by assuming we'll make the smart choice. So sometimes the best strategy is to make the stupid choice that no computer would expect. Dr. Foster had been put in charge of a new department dedicated to understanding alien psychology. Her office was filled with recordings of alien communications and cultural studies from dozens of species. The hegemony rules through fear, she explained to Jake during one of his visits. They make every species believe that resistance is hopeless, but fear only works if people believe it. Once you show them that the hegemony can lose, that fear starts to crumble. The most important change was happening in the shipyards. Human engineers, led by teams trained by Pete Williams before his death, were building a new type of warship. These vessels were smaller and faster than traditional battleships, designed to work together in groups like wolves hunting in packs. 6 months after Franklin Station, Jake found himself commanding a fleet of 20 ships on the edge of hegemony, space. Intelligence reports said that Vexthal was bringing a massive fleet to attack human colonies, and Jake's job was to stop them. But this time, he wasn't alone. Ships from 12 different species had joined the human fleet. There were the crystalline vessels of the ether, who had broken away from the hegemony after hearing about the battle. The organic ships of the Verdani, who could heal themselves during battle. Even some former hegemony species had switched sides. Admiral, Lisa Parker's voice came over the communication channel from her ship. Long-range sensors are picking up the enemy fleet. It's big, really big. Jake looked at his tactical display. The hegemony force had over 200 ships, 10 times larger than the fleet that had attacked Franklin Station. But this time, Jake had 67 vessels under his command, and all of them were crewed by people who had chosen to fight for freedom. All ships, Jake broadcast on an open channel. This is Admiral Morrison. A year ago, the hegemony thought they could take human space with 47 ships. They learned they were wrong. Today, they're coming with 200 ships, thinking that numbers alone will give them victory. He paused, looking at the mixed fleet of human and alien vessels on his screen. They're wrong again. We're not fighting just for humanity anymore. We're fighting for every species that wants to be free. We're fighting for the idea that no empire, no matter how powerful, has the right to enslave entire worlds. The communication channel crackled with responses in dozens of different languages, all saying the same thing. They were ready to fight. Dr. Foster's voice came from the communication station. Admiral, I'm detecting something interesting in the hegemony fleet communications. They're arguing among themselves. Some of their allied species are questioning whether this attack is wise. Jake smiled. Good. Let them argue. Fear works both ways. They're afraid of us now. As the two fleets moved toward each other, Jake thought about Pete Williams and all the other humans who had died at Franklin Station. They had started something that day, something that was spreading across the galaxy like fire. The hegemony had ruled through strength and fear for 3,000 years, but they had never faced an enemy that grew stronger every time it was attacked. They had never fought people who became more determined with every loss. All ships, Jake ordered. Attack formation. Let's show them what happens when giants stumble. At the time, battle for the future of the galaxy was about to begin, and for the first time in millennia, the outcome was not certain. The age of hegemony dominance was ending, and the age of freedom was just beginning.